Bring us in. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Virtual Selling Live. And today, there's a twist. I have a special guest. And Tracey isn't a sales trainer, too. So we're going to have somebody that's giving you real experiences from selling real technical products. Welcome, Tracey. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Nicholas.
Excited to go and get technical with us and break it down?
I love to get technical, Nicholas. It's bringing it up a level that I struggle with.
And that's fair. Would you mind telling everybody a little bit about you and maybe a little bit about your journey and why, like, why now you ask the questions you do, or how you explain things, how things have changed? Because I know you started in a technical background and then moved to a founder sales role, and that had to have been a big change in how you present yourself.
Absolutely. So I worked as a technical architect for a little over a decade. So I worked with the kind of people that get excited when they discover a new prime number. And then I decided to found a company and found as I was trying to explain our security products that I didn't have that common understanding that I had with my peers. So, to a technical person, if you're trying to explain what security is, it's like asking, why do you need air? Um, but when I was dealing with business stakeholders, they were like, well, why do we need this security? And I was like, well, it's obvious, but I couldn't really articulate it. So I really had to step
Mm-hmm.
back and think, okay, if I knew nothing about security, but I was running a business, why is that important to me?
Yeah. And welcome, Kinder. Welcome, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us. We get a lot of people that come talk to us at KO that they sell something very technical like yourself, and they just, the biggest thing we hear is, I start talking to somebody and I can see their eyes glaze over and they just don't get it and they don't
Mm.
understand it. What do you think causes that? Why do you think people get so lost in the conversation?
I think the tendency for technical people is to go right into the weeds right away because that's where we're comfortable. We like to know all the details, have all the information. But when you're talking to a C-level executive who's got 5 minutes to understand, do I need this or do I not need this? You need to simplify it. And what we found works best actually is putting it into a picture if we can.
And have you been using that for prospecting as well? Will you use like a pie chart, or what are some of the things that you would use?
Absolutely. So I'll try and show
Ah,
you an image here. So basically, what we found is there's a sweet spot between security and usability. And C-level people are
interesting.
interested in both usability and security. So if we can show them that we can improve security while also improving user experience, then we have their attention.
Yeah, visual prospecting. They say that our brains don't actually understand words. They turn it into pictures. And so when you go with pictures, it actually plays to the way your brain memorizes. And it also will add an emotion so it'll remember it longer.
Yeah, or another one we use to explain the time savings with our product is just giving them a clock because everyone understands what a clock is.
Clever.
And we've even gone so far as to make ourselves into cartoons, and we do a lot of video explainer videos, and we use cartoons to explain things on a simpler level.
And what have the results been like? Do you feel like it leads to better conversations and to more meetings?
Absolutely. I think people like the approach. It's a little bit unconventional. When I was looking at sort of my competition, everyone had a blue website and lots of technical details. We're trying to be more edgy. So we've got, red and yellow as our colors. We're doing cartoons. We're just being, a little bit different, standing out.
Yeah, Kinder was just saying that terminology factors in. And you probably notice that a lot when you get cold called. You can really tell if somebody understands you by the words they use.
Yeah, and that's been really important is understanding the language our clients use. So, for example, we do a lot of work in the financial industry. So, credit unions call their customers members, but banks call their customers customers. So, whenever I'm doing a presentation for a credit union, I'm sure to use the word members to show I understand who their customers are.
Interesting. And yeah, those subtle, it seems like such a subtle little thing, but if you misspoke, people know that you don't normally deal with them. And that's the danger too. You've probably seen this with your prospecting. I see a lot of people will talk to dozens of industries at once
Mhm.
because they have this really big product that appeals to everyone. So they want to go far and wide. But what happens is they get lost in the language and people
Mhm.
don't feel like they know them.
Yeah, we've really found that as well because our product applies to all industries, but we've really focused on the financial industry because we had some early success there, have some referenceable customers, we understand the language.
Do you find that storytelling works well for you too, using like your social proof from past experiences?
Absolutely. So, we kind of use the story of Grandpa's story. So our product is, securing call centers. So when a user calls into a call center, we verify them with a push notification to their phone instead of annoying security questions. So we tell the story of, Grandpa calls into the call center. He gets asked for line 150 on his tax return. He doesn't know it. It hurts his dignity because he's used to being the man in charge who knew everything. Very embarrassing for him. So we're trying to give him his dignity back. And people seem to really relate to that story because everyone's got a, father or mother or grandfather or grandmother who's been in that situation where they're, someone who's been very capable their whole life, and now all of a sudden they're being, frustrated by trying to call a call center and just get some basic services because the types
Mm-hmm.
of security questions being asked are really difficult for someone with, dementia or who doesn't have, a good understanding of technology and can't just pull up, a PDF of their tax return and pull out line 150 on the fly.
Mm-hmm. And the emotion you tied to very relevant emotions that puts people in there. And when you start telling a story, that's the biggest thing is they gravitate that emotion, they hold on to it. So I could see why that would work so well is people will get frustrated with you and then get excited, for that hero's tale of how you're going to go and they're going to win.
Absolutely.
How do you go about targeting people? So when you're being being technical, do you go directly for the technical buyers? There's a lot of people here that'll be prospecting just like yourself that are
Mhm.
curious like what works, who do you talk to, who's your
So
first
we're
approach?
kind of going at both levels. So there's the business owners, which might be, a VP of risk or CIO, and they're semi-technical buyers. They have, a good and broad understanding of technology, but not maybe a deep understanding in our particular area. And then we'll also go for the people who are maybe two levels below them, the architects or the developers who want the, the detailed information. And we do a completely different presentation for them that's much more detailed, and try and get them to meet in the middle because really, you know, top down decision that doesn't have bottom up support isn't going to be very effective, and vice versa. So we
Hmm.
really want to build champions at every level.
Yeah, and if you don't have those influencers, they may not have the authority to say yes, but they definitely have the authority to go and shut things down if they don't like it.
Exactly.
Has that changed the way you've taken that approach? Is that how you started or is that evolved over time?
So it's evolved over time. So we started off targeting the decision makers, but we struggled at first until we learned how to speak to them. So I think we're doing much better with them now. And Kim's helped me a lot with that. We did some private coaching with her as well as the KO sales program to really define what questions to ask them. And then what we found is sometimes we'd get the buy-in and we'd get even a project, and then the people who are implementing were like, "Why are we implementing this?" Because we hadn't gotten their buy-in. So
Mm,
just sort of naturally evolved where we realized, we need buy-in at every level.
yeah, not only are you speaking their language and finding that need, but you're also figuring out who's going to do the work and make sure they know why they're doing it. Yeah, it makes sense. I think that's a really common error is that people always just go to decision makers and don't realize that it can get you in trouble fast too, even if they do say yes.
And we've done a bit of A/B testing as well, where we just went for the people who were actually implementing. And what we found is they would love the idea, they wanted to implement it, but they were scared to ask their boss because it was a
Oh,
money
interesting.
question. So we really had to go at things from both levels. And when we did talk to the architects, we also had to provide them with materials to approach their boss with, because often they wouldn't know how to talk to the stakeholder either. They would get lost in the weeds in explaining, and the stakeholder wouldn't understand the business value.
Interesting. Would you mind talking about some of the other testing that you've done?
Yeah, so we really like the A/B testing. So we use HubSpot for our emails. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll very often do two emails and send them to two different audiences and see which we get the better results from. And then going forward, we know how to refine if there's a particular subject line that's worked. One of the things we found works really well. We've done a lot of speaking gigs at credit union conferences and such. And so if we put the conference name or an industry term they're familiar with in the subject line, we get a much higher open rate.
Did you find that it depends on how long that title is too? I found that when I was originally putting the whole virtual selling live into the title, it
Too much.
way too much.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually shorten to an abbreviation. So like the Canadian Credit Union Conference, we'll put CCUA conference follow up instead of, we're trying to sell you a TechJutsu product, because then
I've
it's something
noticed.
they know and, has a certain amount of authority with them.
Have you noticed that communication has got a lot smaller too over the past few years?
Yeah, I think from texting, we're all just used to, if you give me too much to read, I'm not going to read it. So we try and be as concise as possible. I know Kim always talks about if I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter. And that's really an exercise we do with all our presentations. Even we go through and we're like, could we say this shorter? Is there a way to be more concise? And that's really helped us.
I was talking to my friend Marcus Chan yesterday, and he was saying that an interesting way of doing this is the whisper test.
Mm.
If I were to walk up to a random person, but they're my key demographic, and I whispered in their ear, would they run to follow me because they want to know how the heck I knew so much about them, or would they instantly try to get rid of me because what I was saying wasn't relevant?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good idea.
It's hard because you have to get really precise and you have to ask really big questions, and it's not always easy to go to those customers and ask those big questions. I imagine like some of the stuff you've learned has come over the past 5 or 10 years, and it's because you've been looking at those scenarios and why it worked and why it didn't, and it wasn't because of what they specifically said.
Yeah, I think one of the easy traps, as a founder, we're all in love with our companies, right? We think this is the greatest thing ever. But you have to figure out it's not about you. It's about your customer. What do they need? What do they want to hear?
Kinder actually has a really good question, so I'm going to throw it up for us.
Great.
Have you found results varied by medium method used to collect data? Email versus text versus LinkedIn?
We found LinkedIn is our most powerful source. It seems that basically all of our target market is on LinkedIn and they check it regularly, both for content and for connection. So we really focus on providing content. We do a webinar every month and then we post a replay of that webinar on LinkedIn. When we do send them a message, we try and also send them some information as opposed to just hey, do you want to be connected?
Mm-hmm.
Try and give them value at every step.
What about YouTube? I know some people are winning with YouTube because it's intent based. Have you? I know that you have a YouTube presence as well. How has that been for you?
YouTube's been great. I think video is just the medium of the future. I've even seen within our industry, we used to look up, procedures, which was a big long document for how to do something. Now people
Mm-hmm.
just want to go to YouTube and find out how to do something. So we've focused a lot on content and also in using those cartoon images of us to make that content easy to understand.
One thing we've tried doing, and I'm curious if you've tried as well, is instead of leaving a voicemail, we've left text messages. Have you tried that?
Yeah, people are definitely more interested in text messages. I don't think anyone listens to a voicemail.
Kim had mentioned it to me a while back, and I thought, the most effective my voicemail ever was for me is when it went voice to text and actually sent me a text message, but I never called back because it's asynchronous. I just responded to it when I could, but it was
Mm.
always back in a text message. So it's interesting how we would do that, but you couldn't send like a big long text message. It would be, one sentence, maybe two,
Yeah.
but it had a huge impact on booked meetings by playing with text messages versus leaving that voicemail.
The other thing we found really effective is getting people in our network to introduce us to someone, because then they
Mm.
feel, because of that connection, that they at least need to have an initial conversation with us.
Yeah, it's a powerful social trigger to go and have that social proof by somebody you know. Another really interesting one that's on Sales Navigator you guys should try, or if you may have already tried, is you use the search filter that worked for that company.
Hmm.
And what you can do is you sort by your customers, and what you do is you reach out to them and you say, "Hey, we did this work with that company you worked with, and this is what happened. Interested?"
Huh.
But
Yeah,
because
we have
they
to.
it plays the social proof because they know that company,
Mhm.
and they can even ask their peers at that company, they're still connected. But it's a great way to leapfrog forward and shorten the sales process.
Yeah, 'cause you're providing them with something of interest.
And they would know the internal workings depending on what department they were in, so it could actually speed up delivery, or get you, instead of starting at, meeting 1, you might be at meeting 3, or you have more decision makers in that room because they're excited because they want to be that champion that gets to say, "Hey, I brought this to the company."
Yeah, LinkedIn's just so powerful. So definitely been our social media of choice.
Since we're on the topic of social media, how do you feel about TikTok?
I haven't done any TikTok. It's probably just because it's not my generation. But I do know we've chatted about it, so not closing the door on it yet, but not sure.
I've noticed that the comments are getting more mature, and there's more technical people on TikTok, but they're there to have fun. They're not necessarily there to learn, but I do
Yeah.
think that we're only a year or two away where they just want short, fun content to learn. It's not enough just to go and do a screen share of somebody going through anymore. They want to, that teaser reel to get them to that long content.
One thing I've been trying to figure out how to leverage, I think a lot of our target market play video games. So if we could somehow be, making relationships in a video game, I think that would be very useful.
It'd be interesting to go and turn it into like a hacker and try to get around the system, but make it just as a fun game. Could you fool the system?
Probably. I do. I do have one of our consultants. That's how he met his wife. He was going to go on a dating site. He was like, "I'm not going to pay for this," so he just hacked the dating site and like reached out to the woman he wanted and explained what he did. And bless her heart, she was actually responded to him probably out of pity, and they're now married.
Well, that's unique. I can't say that most people can tell that story.
She's like, "Well, at least he was smart." So
I think gamification is going to be something big soon. And I think a lot of companies are starting to play with it. I've noticed that CRMs and like different communities are starting to do that. I'd
yeah.
love to go and hear how you start experimenting with that, because I think it'll be something big in the next couple of years.
We're noticing like some of my employees have had conversations started on Reddit or something where they're doing something completely non-business related and just end up chatting with somebody. So I think that's more powerful.
Um, right now, we have the greatest access to our peers that we've ever had. And who would
Mhm.
you rather trust? The review sites, which you trusted because they were your peers,
Yeah.
or would you rather trust the salesperson that's in front of you? We're the most educated we've ever been, or at least have the most access to information we've ever had. So it's just hard to find those good sources. I think that's where LinkedIn's really coming in, and YouTube.
Mhm.
But those communities can't be about your company; they have to be about a category. And I think that's the hardest part, being technical, is even if I was just talking about sales, I can't go too much into KO. I have to go into just what is the foundation that helps you, or what are the questions that are burning in your mind that I can answer for you.
Mhm.
And that's hard. It's hard. It takes a lot of discipline to figure those out.
Absolutely.
Oh, Kindred,
And it's
another
not an
good
end
question.
process. We're constantly having to refine our messaging.
I was talking to a company that said that the most success they've had has been refining their messaging every 6 months. And they put it on a schedule, and they spend 2 days reviewing all the messaging, all the call to actions on their website. And
Mhm.
it has given them a 25% increase quarter over quarter thanks to doing that.
Yeah, I believe it. We do more of a micro approach where we're refining each time we send a message out, we review it and look, is there a way we could make this better? Could we make it shorter? Could we use a picture instead of a word?
That's good discipline. I something fun to go and try too. I learned this from Justin Michaels. is you reply back to your email if you haven't heard from them from a day or two, and all
Mhm.
you reply back is thoughts. And what it does is it puts it back up to the top of their email, but you're
Makes
not
them read it.
adding to the content. And then another fun one is you just write like thoughts, or like you put something really short and snappy in there, and
Mhm.
then throw just a picture. So they'll look at the picture, they'll get interested, and they'll read your first email.
That's a good idea. I'll try that. Thank you.
It it works really well, and it's almost no effort.
Yeah.
Kinder has another good question in here. Thank you, Kinder. With the spike in digital cloud services, have you found that the need has been more of a need for sales factor than building desire?
Sorry, sales factor?
I think that, and if you want to clarify, Kinder, what I'm getting out of this with
Mhm.
the just the amount of options out there, have you found that you've had to put more effort into selling it properly versus just getting the word out there?
I'd say no. And in our particular business, the rise of cloud services has created more of a rise for security because it was much easier to secure things when it was, in a physical location behind a firewall. Now that it's on the cloud and anyone could potentially access it, you really need to have your second factor of authentication and make sure it's a secure factor of authentication. And then maybe make it easier for the users by removing a password or some annoying factor that's not particularly secure anyway. So we've just had a lot more need. But there are so many security products out there now that I think organizations are a little confused on which ones they need. So you do need really targeted messaging about what problem you're solving. So, our problem that we're solving is how do you verify someone who calls into your call center? And, as an extension to that, how do you make it easy for them and how do you make it more secure?
Makes me think of the construction world, that they have those near miss reports, and that's kind of the trigger that they're going to be coming out and talking to you to go and make a change because they saw that they need to make a change because something bad just about happened. Are you finding that you're getting a lot of like trigger events where people are going, holy cow, we just about lost a ton of money and a whole bunch of downtime just because we weren't safe or secure? Are you finding that people are reaching out from that near miss, or is it there, or is there other trigger events that are getting you to people to reach out?
So usually the trigger event that causes someone to reach out is one of their peer organizations had a breach. So, for example, Bank of Montreal recently had someone call and impersonate a user to their call center, got access to this woman's account, and drained all their funds. And then they wouldn't refund her, so she went to CBC, and it was on CBC national news. So, Bank of Montreal was shamed very publicly for this. And as a result of that, we got a lot more interest from banks and financial institutions who are like, we don't want to be in the news.
Yeah, that loss aversion. That's really interesting. As you guys are listening to this, I'd love to hear in the chat, what are some of the triggers that get people talking to you? I know one of the ones that people reach out to us is that they get put on a PIP, an individual performance plan, that
Mhm.
they're scared they're going to get fired, or they're looking at cash flow statements going, I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. Two very common ones that we get people reaching out to us. I also notice a lot of people will reach out too just about, so how does this LinkedIn thing work? I'm sure you have friends that ask you that too. Are your clients? Ooh, another good one. Kinder, you're on fire today. Are your clients researching more but misunderstanding the needed service you have to re-educate buyers? So when they go and reach out, are you noticing there's a misunderstanding, and that going through that sales process, you're having to re-educate them on the truth?
They're definitely more researching themselves. So, by the time we've talked to them, they've often talked to someone else who's used our services, or they've done some research on our website or watched our YouTube videos. I think we're clear enough in our messaging now that people understand what we do and what value it provides. So really the education we're often giving them, sometimes they'll ask us, who are your competitors? Because they don't want to go research that. So they're hoping we can do it easier for them. So, we're explaining, no one's doing exactly what we're doing. Their companies are doing similar things. And, here's the pros and cons of using us versus using them.
Hmm.
So we're having a lot of those conversations.
Sounds like you're having a lot of non-technical conversations first before you get to the technical.
Yes. Um, and it's interesting, even when we get to the technical, once we've convinced everyone this is the right technical solution, there's, the other issues in the selling process, such as, well, how do we get budget for this?
Mm-hmm.
And, often that's, we're helping the technical people craft a presentation that says, like, puts a cost, a dollar figure on, say, what's the reputational risk if, we end up in the news because we have a breach.
That
And if you can
business
get,
case.
the stakeholders to put a dollar sign on that, then okay, well, maybe there's a smaller dollar sign to actually proactively fix the solution. And then it becomes easier to get budget.
One of the figures that I've heard recently is that technical sales are somewhere between 70 and 80% non-technical before they get technical. And even then, it's only 5 or 10% because it's just about integration more than it is anything else.
Yeah, integration is huge. So companies don't just want to know that this is a product that can do, like, solve a certain problem. They want to know how can it integrate with other things I already have. So, for example, in the banking industry, there's often fraud detection software that notices things like if you're typing at a different speed than you normally do, or you are accessing your banking from a different country than you normally would. So we would integrate with that to prompt for a second factor of authentication if there's a suspicion of fraud.
They even go after your typing speed. Isn't that interesting? I would probably get triggered just from the morning to the afternoon.
Yeah, pre coffee, Nicholas, and after coffee.
Would there be definitely a noticeable difference? I didn't know that. That's really interesting. I knew that I have a few friends that like to go and hide behind VPNs
Yeah.
for this, that, or the other thing. And I always find it funny when they complain that they keep getting issues with security because they keep thinking that they're in wherever they're masking themselves. And it's like, well, you guys kind of brought it on yourself.
Yeah.
There's easier ways to do that. Oh, good question again, Kinder. I'll pull this one up for us, Tracy. Did that change your presentation style as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our presentation style is much more top down. So we start with the highest level concept, and then we have almost an appendix. So if they want to go in the weeds, we've got some slides. But if they don't, and often they don't, we just don't bring them up. But we also really try and address in the value proposition, how we're going to provide value and how that value can translate into dollars and cents. So for example, if we're providing a means for self-service password reset, how many help desk people does that save you, and what do you pay your help desk people? Well, that's a dollar figure we can figure out and present to the
Mm-hmm.
company as a savings. Another one is insurance companies will give you discounts if you're implementing proper cyber insurance procedures. So, we can put a dollar value on that.
As they should. That makes sense. As like if BMO or whatever the bank you said they can get hacked just by somebody calling in. Imagine all the other stuff they can get.
Yeah, and a lot of those things don't even end up going to insurance. Like, often companies will just blame their customer, like, oh, you must have given someone your password, or things like that. So there's, I think, a lot more cases out there that haven't ended up in the media.
Interesting. Hmm. Makes me. It's funny because I talk to a lot of people about technical sales, but I think the more and more I hear about it from different angles, I'm realizing that what we think and what we love to talk about, because I love talking about tech too. Like I have a Raspberry Pi that I was playing with, and I built an Octopi and locked myself out of my computer. And it's not something I would tell everyone because most people aren't interested. But when you
I
get
love
that one
Raspberry
person,
Pi.
you can dive right in the weeds because it's fun because you can figure out coding or how you did it or even the thought process behind it because that's interesting too because coders have a different thought process how they work through things. But we kind of fall in love with that and then we forget to build the business case, which is the other 80% of the process that and we just want to dive in. And I keep hearing that over and over. So going back to even Kinder, just how does that change your presentation style? I imagine it changes your prospecting style even more than just your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having those really two presentation streams, like one for the technical user, and one for the business decision maker, and they're really different presentations.
If you were starting again today, what is the one thing you would change right away?
I would have spent the time earlier to ask myself why and to interview my, um, you know, clients from previous jobs or clients prospects and find out what they really needed. So probably about a year in, we did an exercise where we interviewed our clients, and the information that came out of that was just immensely valuable.
Hmm. Mine actually is very similar to yours. I wish I would have got to know my best customers better in order to find more of them instead of trying to target too many people at once. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't need a lot of customers; you need the right ones.
well, too, and I'm sure everybody can appreciate this, and please throw it in the comments if you do. There's nothing more uncomfortable when you get caught in those conversations when you realize you don't know enough and you're talking to a different industry and they're referencing terminology that you have no clue and you have to keep either asking or keep pretending. And that is a horrible place to be in. And once you've, I think it was David C. Baker that said, once you've tasted competence, you never want to go back. But, once you know your customer better than anyone else, that in itself is an asset that nobody can take away from you.
Well, it was really interesting when we were interviewing our customers. So, most kind of C-level decision makers are, men in their 50s, so they didn't came from a generation where they didn't talk about feelings. And one of our questions was like, how do you feel if you implement something that really secures your company? And they couldn't actually define it in feelings. That was just such a place they didn't talk about. Um,
Interesting.
but all of them said what was really important to leave is their kind of legacy, because they were in the age group where they're looking to leave a legacy, was to have provided value. And so we use those words now a lot in our marketing and our sales speak.
Interesting. Huh, I would have never, makes sense, but I would have never guessed that. Do you find that when people are getting promotions or go through a funding round, I know it's a big one on LinkedIn that people talk about all the time. Is that a good time for you to reach out for a technical solution?
Funding round, they're probably too busy. I think we're more useful in the pre-promotion phase. So someone who's an up and coming leader who really wants to stand out, where you can help them to implement something that they're going to get kudos for and get recognized for, get peer appreciation for, then that's an added value that we can add to them in their career, and that's something they really appreciate.
Hmm, that makes sense. Hopefully you're listening, Tiffany. Tracy's giving you lots of stuff to go sell. Did you have any questions for me? We're coming to the end here that you would like me to go and answer or you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, so kind of back to Tiffany, she's our new account manager, and really great personality. She's been out there working LinkedIn, and she's already got a CIO chatting with her. What would you recommend for her as someone who's just coming into a new company?
You had actually said it on your advice if you were to do things over, niche down, get very specific on who you need to talk to. Use Sales Navigator if you guys are. Build a very small, very tight segmented list, and then figure out, like you were saying, who those buyers are specifically, the decision makers, and who those influencers are. Break them out into two different lists, and be very specific on how you're working that list and how often, and track your progress. So if you know that you need to go and do LinkedIn right now caps your connection request to about 100 a week. So if that's your limit, if you can only do 100, which is a lot,
Yeah.
how can you go and work that 100 that gets you the best results and books the most meetings? And that's what I start with, is start reverse engineering it. So what questions work best? When should you approach them? One thing I've done is I have a comment strategy that I'll comment on two or three of their posts using Sales Navigator first,
Mhm.
and then I'll connect. And actually, a lot of the time they'll connect with me and book a meeting.
And I know she's got one CIO she's been chatting with, and she's asked him a question and he hasn't responded for a couple days. Should she ask him again or provide some content, or how would you recommend not letting that conversation go stale?
And so the scenario is that you talk to a prospect, you had a meeting, or you just talked to them.
Just chatting with them on LinkedIn.
It really comes down to how warm it is. So if you got into the weeds and they admitted they had a problem and you hit
Mhm.
on something, then I think it's great to go and follow up. And I would say between 48 and 72 hours, just kind of stay every 2 days, kind of see top of mind.
Yeah.
But you guys do a lot of really great videos that most people don't have access to. And what you could do is complement them very nicely by giving unexpected value by saying, based on, so and so, they found this really helpful, which is very similar to your business. So I thought you would appreciate it. And so you could, I don't know, you want to call them value drops or credibility, but
Mhm.
you're basically giving them value before you have an ask. And I find that it's kind of somewhere in between 2 and 3 bits of value before you can book that meeting. And then if I slow it down that little bit, then it tends to be a faster sales cycle because they're better educated and they're a better champion. And
Nice. Thank you.
the other thing I would say for you, Tiffany, too, as you're mapping this out, look at the politics. Who has sway? Take your time to map it out a little bit and figure out a lot of times you'll have somebody that has done really great things and they're a go getter and they have had uh, bigger projects that they've worked on. And so people trust them with things. They may not actually have the say to go in and say yay or nay, but they can definitely squash things if they don't like it. They are the best person to have on your team. And I find them the best person to reach out to because they're more approachable and they're invested because when they do well, the company does well and they're also could get a promotion. So figure out who those people are over and above just the people that are going to be doing the work and it moves things quicker. And so if you are reaching out to somebody that's not that person, build a business case, get 2 or 3 things that align with what you guys do. And when you reach out to that decision maker, use it as ammo and surprise them with value because you've done your research and you're telling something they didn't know that they need to address. Tiffany's got a question here. Would you recommend trying the thoughts message with a content photo as well? Oh, yeah. Anytime you ask somebody for advice that it plays to their experience and expertise, it's a compliment. But you have to ask yourself, are you doing this just as a sales message or are you doing it in a way that complements them? Because when you do it in a way that complements them, it feels good, which makes them more receptive to information, positive psychology, and then you can actually go and dive deeper. So, going back to what you were saying, the whole 80/20, 80% is just you working through the process and making a business case, and then 20% is the technology. Asking people how they are, as Kim teaches, is really important. And I do it on LinkedIn all the time because if you go and dive into the weeds and they're in a bad mood, they don't remember any of it, but they will remember a picture or a video. But I'm noticing even that your videos, I used to be able to get 60 seconds. It's about 15 to 30 right now, and that's kind of the best. Did you have any other questions?
I think the video bit was really important to us because I think our videos have been usually in the 2-minute mark. So thanks. We'll start shortening those.
Mine used to be 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, and I rolled them out like an onion. So they had different layers as you went through. And I thought, if the more interested they are, the more that they would go through it. What would happen? And I asked people after, I was like, how could I make this better? And they said, I saw it was 5 minutes and it didn't deserve 5 minutes of my time. So I didn't bother.
Hmm.
Another interesting thing is that when I use Vidyard and I use the GIF where it like waves them and they gives it like a little brief intro to what it is,
Yeah.
that also increased open rates quite a bit. I would say at least 50%.
Okay. Vidyard VID.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a video company that they allow you to track everything. And I believe it also plugs in with HubSpot, although I'm trying to figure that out right now.
We'll give that a try. Thank you.
They did an update and it kicked it out, and I don't know what happened. So I got to go and play with that over the holidays. But it'll also tell you how much they watched. and if they shared it. I love it for sales enablement, like buyer enablement, because you were saying you have the different influencers in the conversation. What I'll do is I'll put it all into an email and then I can send it out to all the different people. And
Mhm.
so I can actually watch as the different people in the domain will go and open it. It won't tell me who because it's not tracking their email address, but it'll tell me that somebody from the domain is watching it. And normally with SMB to enterprise deals, that can be anywhere from 4 to 10 people that I'll notice. All of a sudden, you're like, somebody from the domain, somebody from the domain. But it also tell me which video.
Yeah, that'd be very useful.
And it was always funny because it was the ones that I thought would be the least watched because they were, I don't know, superficial. Like it wasn't very deep or like it was the ones they watched because it was the one that simply explained why why the business case and not why, why to do the technical things that even, in sales. So even with us, technical doesn't always win. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all your questions. And thank you everyone that joined us today for this special event. I'd love to get your feedback in the comments or in direct messages. And Tracy, where can people find you? How can they connect with you after the show?
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. My last name is Nyholt, Nyholt, or you can email me at tracy.nyholt@techjutsu.com. And
Perfect.
thanks so
Well,
much for having me.
happy to thank you for coming in short notice. I really appreciate you being able to go and talk to us and give us the non-sales view of everything because normally it's just everybody hears from the sales trainers. Now they get to hear from someone else. So thank you very much. And I hope everybody has happy holidays and stay warm out there.
Cheers.
Bye.